Hello everybody and welcome back to the Dragon's Library. And today we are going to be reviewing Loki Season 2. Now, for those of you who haven't watched Loki Season 1, first off, go do that. Even if you're sick of Marvel stuff, it's a lot of fun, it's a good series. But, for those of you who don't want to go back and watch it, basically, there is a sacred timeline in the current Marvel Universe. And anytime someone diverges from it, it creates a parallel timeline, and the Time Variance Authority, who are kind of like this overseer, they guard over the sacred timeline. They purge the new branch, and then they purge the person who caused the deviation after giving them a trial. When the Avengers traveled back in time in Endgame, Loki, at the end of Avengers 1, grabbed the Tesseract and vanished. The Time Variance Authority picked him up, brought him in for a trial, but his execution was halted because one of their members, Mobius, wanted to hire him as a new member of the TVA to help hunt down another Loki variant, a female Loki, who was revealed to be named Sylvie. Long story short, she was hiding on apocalypses, and she was working on tracking down who was really responsible for the TVA. They do so, getting to the end of time itself, and the two of them end up fighting because it's revealed that this guy, who is clearly Kang the Conqueror, called He Who Remains, was essentially setting this all up because he needs someone to take over for him now and continue to watch over the sacred timeline and keep it safe. Loki and Sylvie have a philosophical falling out. Sylvie manages to kill He Who Remains, causing the end of the sacred timeline and for divergence to branch uncontrollably, and Loki gets booted to what at first seems like a version of the TVA run by Kang the Conqueror. Now, that was how the season 1 ended. It was basically this whole, oh no, the timelines are splitting, we're gonna have a bunch of Kang the Conquerors, we're gonna have a big multiversal war, the TVAs need to stop them. However, it's actually more interesting than that, and I will give this credit. I thought this was going to go straight into, we got a bunch of Kang variants running around. At first, it looks like a version of the TVA where Kang the Conqueror is still doing that, but one of the first things that happens is Loki is phasing in and out of time of the TVA, which should be impossible. The TVA is like the beginning of time. You shouldn't be able to move around, get sort of outside of time itself. Like, they can literally view the sacred timeline through a window. But Loki is somehow able to move through time in these areas. And the only person we've seen that can control time in those areas or predict time in places like the end of time or outside of time was Kang the Conqueror. So things are already getting a little tricky. In the first episode, Loki ends up teleporting between this TVA version he's in, which I'm not going to entirely spoil, and the present TVA. If you haven't figured it out from that, I'd kind of spoiled it already. This older TVA is literally the TVA when it was founded. Kang wiped all the members' memories. They were all variants from the sacred timeline that he picked up as soldiers. And when he was done, he wiped all their memories and gave them their orders and installed all the fake robot council to rule over it while he went to the end of time to sit on his chair. So Loki is now trying to figure out how to stabilize his time hopping while also trying to help the people in the present, or in the TVA's, separate timeline, deal with the fallout of Kang. See, there is a problem because there's been these power surges, and it turns out the weaver, or the loop, at the beginning of time that keeps the timeline contained, prevents the branches from branching before time starts. It essentially acts like a funnel, keeping it all, holding it together. It also supplies the TVA with power. And it's about to blow up. If this happens, time essentially unwinds. It's this really cool spaghettification effect. I love it. It's actually a very interesting way of picking the universe ending. They have to figure out how to stop it. Now, I'm not going to go too much into this because a lot of it is very, very interesting just to do on your own. There's one Kang variant we get to talk to, and there's a lot of time paradox stuff going on here where it's, I'm not going to spoil. Basically, let's just say there's a lot more happening than it looks like, and the initial goal that they work to is not how it ends. So it's sort of revealed this is all kind of Kang's plan. I'm not going to tell you what the plan is, but it is very complicated and essentially boils down to a philosophical disagreement between Loki, Sylvie, and He Who Remains. He Who Remains is of the opinion that the multiversal war was so destructive that the only way for existence to exist and not eventually collapse in on itself is if it exists as a singular timeline with just him, who is, again, he's a Kang, but he claims to have the universe's best interests at heart. Regardless if he's right or not, it is seen how destructive multiple timelines can be. It's not like it's a good thing. He's clearly telling the truth about the multiversal war and the damage it caused. Sylvie is of the opinion that to restrict anyone to one timeline is an inherent infringement upon the existence of every alternate timeline. Basically, when the TVA goes and prunes any timeline at all, she sees that as you've just killed trillions and trillions of people because they were alternate versions of the people you think should exist. And as someone who is from an alternate timeline, she doesn't even know what she did wrong, and it's probably from such an early version of the TVA that this sacred timeline wasn't even entirely figured out yet. Yeah, that's probably a problem for her. Meanwhile, you have Loki, who, while he doesn't entirely agree that Kang's idea is right, doesn't see another solution. He wants to be free, like Sylvie, but he sees the destruction that's caused by seeking out that freedom without the proper checks. He tries to also push the TVA into a balance where they allow some timelines to exist that are harmless. Basically, you have only one, we need to keep things in check, and unrenegade freedom. And Sylvie and Kang, again, are complete diametric opposites in that regard. You also have Miss Minutes and Renslayer with their own philosophy on how things should be run. Well, Miss Minutes is just an AI who's gone rogue, honestly. But really, it's basically just everyone trying to decide, hey, what does it mean to be free in a timeline that is literally entirely figured out and preordained? If the past, present, and future all exist simultaneously, if all our choices have already been made, what choices do we have? And they explore this in several different ways, especially with other members of the TVA like Hunter B-15, Mobius, and eventually Ouroboros, who's introduced in this series. However, while I like a lot of the themes they explore, and I think it's actually a good place to take it, I like how Mobius doesn't want to check on his past because he's of the opinion it doesn't matter, but eventually tries to accept it. I like that. I think that's good character growth for him. I like where they went with things like Hunter B-15, because she was like one of the main authority figures, and now she's just trying to keep the TVA together. I like it all. But I do think the 6 episodes were a little short and didn't give it entirely enough time to breathe. I would have probably liked one more episode just teasing out a bit more character growth from everyone, letting the plot settle, and kind of explaining what Loki did at the end, because you can kind of figure it out if you watch it over and over again and piece together lore videos so that you can get a decent explanation of sort of what he did. But what Loki does at the end is kind of unexplained, and you do have to kind of figure it out after the fact. I would have liked a bit more exposition just right there. Aside from that, though, I do think this is a very interesting plot that tackles some basic themes on the nature of free will and time travel, which are all fun things for sci-fi to explore. I also think that Loki was a really fun character to do this with, and I think this version of Loki, this Loki that got free after the Avengers, never had the, character growth of Thor 2, Thor 3, I like it. I think it worked out pretty well. Now, in addition to also having good characters and actually some really cool effects, like this big edification thing with the universe, I'm going to keep talking about that because it was a really cool effect and I really liked it. Especially in the scene with the record shop, that was just so cool. But there was one more thing that really surprised me. Now, I don't generally talk about soundtracks. To me, a soundtrack is doing its job if it's mostly unobtrusive. But every once in a while, a show, even not necessarily even a good show, will catch me with a soundtrack and I'll be like, hell yeah, this is amazing. I remember the Sawano drop in All Noah Zero was a really good example. I just went crazy whenever I hear that, even though the show got kind of messy near the end. And Loki has some real bangers in his soundtrack. It's not like a complete hit all the way through, but there's like 1 or 2 pieces throughout, and then the ending song, like right at the end when Loki's having his big, climactic final my decision moment. Oh, it's just a great song. Freaking loved it. Perfect. Perfectly epic and sort of somber. Really nice, really nailed that moment home. And I just have to give Natalie Holt, the composer of that song, her due credit. She did a great job, and it really gave that last scene a good bit of a finality to it. I really liked it. For those of you who do want to know, this is actually the last season of Loki. It's very clear this is how it's supposed to end. So you got a 1, 2, done. Which I'm kind of good with. We had Loki's side story here with this Loki variant, and I think that is the story they wanted to tell. I feel like it was told fairly well. And in conclusion, I think it was just a good series. I think Loki 1 had a much tighter script, like I've said before. But this was an excellent follow-up to that. And quite frankly, I feel like it did the job of closing out this character's story. I would give this a good 8 out of 10. It's not the 9 or 10 out of 10 that I would give Loki season 1, but 8 out of 10 is still a really good thing. Check this out. Moving on from there, we have the announcements. So I've already released the Marvels review. It should be an eye icon for all the stuff I'm about to talk about and that. I think that one's probably gonna come out first, but if this one comes out first, eye cards will be at the end of the next few videos because I don't know what order they're gonna be in. In addition to that, I have 2 book reviews that are gonna be out soon. Murtaugh, already finished with it. Iron Flame, sequel to The Fourth Wing, working out, reading through that. I've also finished playing Lies of Peace, so we'll look for that video game review coming out soon. And in addition to all of that, I may be working on an Attack on Titan review, possibly for the whole series or at least for the finale, because that series just ended and it was like one of the foundational things of my high school to college era anime fanboy kind of thing. So we'll see about that. So yeah. With that all out of the way, we have the end card. There's a video YouTube recommends. Playlist for all the stuff it does here, and the subscribe button down below. Click on it, go to my channel, subscribe. It would seriously mean a lot. And I will see you all next time. Bye!